She was a strong-willed survivor who stood up for others.
To see her mother murdered made her who she was.
She became an advocate for victims of domestic violence.
She's like, I'm not going to ever let this happen again.
But instead, she also met a horrific end.
They saw what looked like a head.
We don't know if it's body parts.
I just chopped this girl up.
What kind of an animal does that?
All the signs point to domestic violence.
This was a crime of passion.
You are going to look at the boyfriend.
He was very obsessive with her.
Those red flags definitely can escalate.
Or was her death collateral damage?
It was just in her nature to try to help.
There was a domestic dispute that got physical.
Her friend is trapped.
Screaming.
August 24th, 2018. It's a sunny Friday morning in the Bronx, New York City's northernmost borough, and home to landmarks like Yankee Stadium and the Bronx Zoo.
People were enjoying themselves. It had been a little rainy a few days before, so people were just getting out.
Many of them are heading a few blocks south of the zoo to Crotona Park.
This is one of the biggest parks in the Bronx. We got kids playing.
And Parks Department employees are working hard to keep things clean.
They were going around picking up trash when one of them noticed a couple of bags dumped on the side of the road.
Which would not seem like a big deal in a park. There's trash bags all the time.
But when the park worker investigates, it's soon obvious she's dealing with more than just illegal dumping.
She went over to the bag and opened it, and inside saw what looked like a head.
She immediately calls 911.
911 emergency. I'm calling from the Parks Department, Crotona Park South and Franklin Avenue. We need PD because we have two big plastic bags and with hair in it, so we don't know if it's body parts.
Hey, go ahead, back up.
Police came, they opened the bag, they saw there were some body parts inside.
The victim appears to be a young Hispanic female.
The body's decomposing. They couldn't identify who this person was.
NYPD 8713. Sergeant Major Crimes are our location. We've got a deceased Hispanic female, 20s to 30s. Check and see if you have an error.
But when the officers ask dispatch to run a missing persons check, they get a tentative hit.
A Bronx woman had just been reported missing by her family 2 days earlier.
Got one hit, a 25-year-old, Lisa Marie Velasquez.
Lisa Marie Velasquez had known a lot of tragedy in her young life.
When she was 12 years old, she was in an apartment with her mother and two younger siblings when her mother's ex-boyfriend broke into the apartment.
The ex-boyfriend had stabbed and killed her mom in front of Lisa and her siblings.
Just to know that the kids witnessed this, it devastates me. No child should endure this. They still have their nightmares.
But Lisa never let her childhood trauma limit her.
After her mother's murder, Lisa and her siblings moved in with their grandmother.
Grandma was at that stage that she had just retired. So Lisa had to take the role of mother, father, and everything in between.
Both of her younger siblings were also special needs, which added to Lisa's level of responsibility.
It was difficult. When Lisa would talk to me about it, she used to cry. She goes, I don't know what to do. I'm lost.
But Lisa never gave up on the people she loved.
Lisa was a loving, a nurturing, a giving person. If you was in her heart and she loved you, she would have died for you.
Her mother's tragic death also triggered a deep commitment to protecting others.
She wanted to work and help with people in the community. She became like an advocate for victims of domestic violence.
She volunteered here all over the place, and I'm like, this child is amazing.
she's a remarkable, beautiful young human being who will just give everything to the world.
And she hoped to turn that dedication to service into a career.
She was in the ROTC. She was in the cadets.
She wanted to become a cop.
That's the brotherhood, sisterhood. People wrap their arms around you. They teach you to protect yourself.
But the memory of her mother's death also led Lisa to keep people at arm's length.
Lisa tended to always be very guarded in her relationships.
How'd it go with Chris the other night?
Girl, I canceled on him last minute.
Okay. Yeah.
It took a while for me to break down those walls that she felt comfortable enough to talk to me.
That was especially true when it came to men.
Lisa always had different boyfriends.
But she was reluctant to commit.
His vibe shifted. I don't know. It was off. I was not feeling it.
She was always go with the vibe. So if your vibe was great, that's how, you had a chance.
And there was one man whose vibes broke through the barriers Lisa built around her. Antonio Wagner.
Hey, excuse me. Is anyone sitting here?
No, actually. Please, take the seat.
Thank you.
He adored Lisa, and he was very attentive to her.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Doing great.
They did love each other.
Lisa was like, I'm moving out my grandmother's house. I'm moving in with my boyfriend.
It looked like she was finally starting to put her past trauma behind her.
But now, it looks as if she may have suffered an even more gruesome fate than her mother.
Police believe the dismembered remains discovered in Crotona Park could be Lisa.
When somebody's dismembered, you have a super messy crime scene.
But despite the horror she suffered after death, there's no disguising how she died.
Her skull showed signs of severe blunt force trauma.
This was not like a robbery where somebody, just shot or stabbed.
The killer went through the trouble of cutting up her body.
What kind of an animal does that?
This was, in criminology terms, the crime of passion.
After witnessing her mother's murder as a child, 25-year-old Lisa Marie Velasquez had devoted her life to helping others escape a similar fate.
She was physically present, but she couldn't do anything. She was a 12-year-old girl cowering. So now, in her mind, she's like, I'm not going to ever let this happen again.
She always mentioned how it was very important to always be there for friends.
She's a loving person, and she was just giving her all.
But now New York police believe they've found her dismembered body in the Bronx.
A maintenance worker found a body dumped in Crotona Park.
They knew this was a young female Hispanic.
And Lisa's family had reported her missing 48 hours earlier.
It will require an autopsy to determine if the remains are Lisa's. But there's little doubt how the woman died.
The woman's skull had suffered severe blunt force trauma.
Usually when you have a victim that has been murdered in such a horrific way, there is a heavy investment from the person that did it. It is typically someone that knows the person. It's a personal thing.
But can the detectives identify the killer?
At that point, they didn't even know where the murder occurred.
But there's other evidence that's always left behind. When you're stuffing body parts in a bag, fiber from your hair, your clothing, that's going in there. There's tons and tons of other things that are left behind as clues.
Detectives have the bags and body parts removed from the crime scene for forensic analysis and autopsy.
They took the bags out. They brought the bags to the medical examiner.
So now the forensics team can go ahead and do their job.
Then detectives conduct a quick canvass of the onlookers.
Since it was a pretty, busy day in the park, People started congregating over to see what's going on.
But while there are plenty of people in the park that day, the detectives come up empty-handed.
No one saw anyone dropping off the garbage bags, which led police to believe they were dumped overnight.
With no leads from the scene, the detectives pay a visit to Lisa's aunt, who'd filed the initial missing persons report.
Police want to talk to people who knew the victim.
Hi, are you Ms. Rivera?
Yes.
I need to ask you a few questions.
The detective, when she showed me her card that it said homicide, I knew.
Oh, God.
She confirms that she had been the one to report Lisa missing.
When was the last time you saw her?
Tuesday, we spent the whole day together.
We went window shopping, went into the Chinese restaurant, then we went back to the front of our building. We have handball courts, swings, and all of that. So we played a little bit of handball. We spent that whole day together from 9 o'clock in the morning, I think it was 8-something in the evening. The best day we've had. The best day we've had.
Lisa and her grandmother lived in the same building as her aunt, on one of the upper floors.
She was gonna go upstairs to take a shower, and that was the last I saw of her.
It wasn't until the next morning that she knew something was wrong.
Lisa normally calls me between 6:30 and 7 on the dot because I'm downstairs by 7. And we would meet, we would sit in front of the building and have coffee. This was for the last 2.5 years, every single day. For some reason, I didn't hear from her. So I know something was up.
Lisa wasn't answering her phone either.
But I still hadn't heard from Lisa that whole day. The following day, I go upstairs and Lisa was nowhere to be found.
Her grandmother hadn't seen or heard from her either.
She said that it was very unlike her because she was a very, very responsible person, and when she didn't get in touch, they reported her missing.
When detectives head upstairs to talk to Lisa's grandmother, she also says she last saw Lisa on Tuesday night.
When she got home, she took a shower and went to bed.
But then, at around midnight, someone had called her.
She started packing some stuff, ran out saying she had to go help a friend. Lisa had a friend, Sierra Martinez. It's somebody she met when she was in school.
She only said good things about Sierra.
She says it's Sierra's boyfriend that's the problem.
And Lisa has told me that he beat Sierra.
Every year, more than 250,000 domestic violence incident reports are filed by the NYPD, roughly 700 calls a day. Of the city's 5 boroughs, the Bronx has the highest number of domestic violence cases and the highest rates of intimate partner homicides. Women of color are the most at risk and account for nearly 30% of these homicides. According to Lisa Marie Velasquez's family, the 25-year-old rushed out of her grandmother's apartment in the early morning hours of August 22nd to help a friend in need.
The family believed that the friend that she had gone to help was 30-year-old Sierra Martinez.
It would be just like Lisa to go running to help Sierra.
She was always there for her.
She would help even a stranger to no end.
But had her determination to help a friend cost Lisa her life?
A maintenance worker discovered the dismembered remains of a young woman in Crotona Park.
The torso and the head were found, and it was very, very hot, and the body was decomposing.
Confirming that it was Lisa would require dental records or DNA.
And while waiting for the medical examiner to establish the victim's identity, the investigation continues.
Police started to try and find out, well, where did she go that night when she ran out of the house at midnight?
So you think she went to Sierra's house?
I know she did.
But Lisa never came home, so her aunt reported her missing.
You think Sierra's boyfriend had something to do with this?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I kept telling her, stop getting in everything, Lisa. You can't save the world.
Or could there be another explanation?
When you do have a murder like this, typically it would be somebody that is either a spouse, significant other, or boyfriend.
Was Lisa seeing anyone?
Yeah, she was dating a guy named Antonio Wagner.
They were living with each other about a month or two, give or take.
But things didn't last.
They had an argument at some point that he threw her out, and she never went back.
Threw her out, like physically?
No, it wasn't like that.
It wasn't a violent relationship, but they had their arguments.
Still, Lisa's aunt says she was happy when the relationship ended.
He's very obsessive with her. Like, he wanted to know where she was at 24 hours a day. He's calling 20 times a day.
The individual definitely has some anger management issues, potentially some narcissistic personality traits.
Okay, well, that's all for now. We're going to follow up on this and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, ladies.
That may or may not mean that Antonio is their killer. But when the detectives get the results of the autopsy, one thing is certain.
The medical examiner identified the body as belonging to Lisa Marie Velasquez.
The autopsy also adds additional details about how she died.
She was hit over the head more than a dozen times with probably a hammer.
Then, once Lisa was dead, the killer had dismembered her body.
According to the medical examiner, the cuts were rough with ragged edges, indicating a large blade or a cleaver was used.
That's not dismembered with a little knife. That had to be something like a sword, machete, or something else.
When details of the murder appear in the local media, the news hits the community hard.
Well, it does have a psychological impact in the community because this case was quite shocking.
But no one is more shocked than Lisa's friends.
That was one of the worst days of my life. I was checking through social media, and that's when I found out that Lisa was murdered. I couldn't believe it.
Lionel told me that Lisa's dead. I paused. Like everything literally just stopped. I just couldn't breathe. I fell into a very, very dark place. I really broke down and I cried.
And there is one friend of Lisa's that the detectives definitely want to talk to. Sierra Martinez.
According to Lisa's family, she was heading to Sierra's apartment on the night she went missing.
She got a call from Sierra, who was very upset, and Lisa, being the friend that she was, just ran out of the house and went to her friend's aid.
At the apartment, they find Sierra struggling to deal with the news that her friend is dead.
Yeah, I heard that it was her. I can't believe it.
Well, we were told that she came to see you the night she disappeared.
Yeah, she did come by.
She said that, oh yeah, Lisa was here.
She also said she'd known Lisa for a long time.
They both went for their GED together, and afterwards they became friends. In fact, at one point they were gonna get an apartment together.
But then she'd met her boyfriend, Daquan Wheeler.
She started dating him. She had a child with him, so instead of moving in with Lisa, she moved in with Daquan.
Lisa's family says that you and Daquan have been having issues.
Yeah, that's why Lisa came over on Tuesday.
She admitted that she was fighting with Daquan.
Sierra said that her and Daquan were working different shifts and had been arguing about dividing the responsibilities around their daughter.
So you called her?
Yeah, she's, like a good mediator, talking things out.
Although, according to Sierra, Daquan was in no mood to talk.
And you know what? Another thing about you, man, I just don't understand. Why are you like this?
I'm just trying to take care of our daughter, and you're not trying to be a good dad.
I'm always a good dad. I pay for everything. You do nothing.
What does that mean?
It means everything. What are you talking about?
Hey, it's me.
Why'd you call her?
So she can help.
No, so she can take your side, right? All right, look, man, I can't do this. Y'all have it. Have a good day. I'm done. Bye. Out.
She said that rather than talk things over, Daquan had stormed out.
Oh, gosh, sweet. What was that all about?
And then everything settled down.
Sierra said since it was so late, she even invited Lisa to spend the night.
But Sierra says Lisa didn't stay long.
She said Lisa had spent the next hour or so on her phone.
She was calling a few friends, texting friends to get money.
I would have given her some, but I'm just as broke as she is.
But then, after an hour of messaging,
Ooh, I got some.
All of a sudden, she said, oh, I got some money.
Did she say where she was going?
No.
Sierra thought she was going to meet the person who was giving her money.
But she didn't mention any names.
All right, hey, I gotta go.
She just ran out of the apartment.
Lisa Velasquez's friend, Sierra Martinez, has just told NYPD detectives that the 25-year-old had dashed out of her apartment the morning she disappeared.
According to Sierra, Lisa spent the previous hour calling around, texting to see if she could get someone to loan her some cash.
She said, all right, someone's going to give me some money. I'm going to get out of here. And she just left.
And that was the last time you saw her?
Yeah.
She says her boyfriend, Daquan Wheeler, came home a little later.
And then Sierra said, she just spent the night with Daquan.
So now the question is, where did Lisa go? Hoping for answers, the detectives subpoena Lisa's cell phone records.
According to Sierra, she had been calling and texting people looking for money. So it shouldn't be that hard to track down.
Then, while waiting to hear back from Lisa's cell phone provider, the detectives bring in her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Antonio.
They especially wanted to talk to Antonio because Lisa's family said he was controlling.
He was very obsessive with her. He wouldn't let her breathe. So I would tell her he was no good for her.
But does that mean Antonio is her killer?
Antonio, we need to ask you some questions about Lisa.
Is she some kind of trouble?
When they brought him in, they broke the news to him that Lisa was dead.
What?
He was shocked, very upset.
When was the last time you saw her?
Just last weekend.
Contrary to what Lisa's aunt told them, Antonio told the detectives that their on and off relationship was very much currently on.
So you didn't see her Tuesday night, though?
Early Wednesday morning?
No, but I did hear from her.
He said he received a text from her saying that she was on her way, she was in a cab, and then another text right after saying, oh, sorry, wrong number.
Detectives suspect that text might have been meant for Sierra, or possibly the person who agreed to loan her money.
He said he tried to call her that morning, couldn't get in touch, she didn't answer the phone.
That didn't seem unusual to you?
A little.
You didn't want to check up on her?
Not really. I figured she'd get back to me eventually.
He really didn't know her friends or her family to call them to see what's going on with her, so he was sort of just waiting to hear back from her.
However, Antonio says there was one way he could check up on her.
He said they shared an account on a money transfer app. He even let the detectives look at the Cash App on his phone.
They saw that she had gotten money that night from a Corey Drake.
Does that name mean anything to you?
No.
Whoever Corey was, Antonio said he'd sent Lisa $100.
They were asking him, was this sort of common? And he said, look, she never really talked to me about money. She never asked for money, so he didn't really question how she got money. That was the relationship they had.
At least that's what Antonio claims. But the detectives aren't so sure.
The detectives at that point were a little suspicious. Is Antonio jealous that some guy is giving his girlfriend money? Like, what's the motive?
Because according to Lisa's aunt, Antonio had very serious control and trust issues.
But Antonio insists that he's telling the truth.
The detectives again pressed Antonio on whether he had seen Lisa that night.
Antonio said he was home sleeping.
All right, well,
But he also lived alone, so there was no one who could confirm what he was saying.
He really didn't have any alibi.
After talking to Antonio, the detectives subpoena his cell phone data to see if they can verify his whereabouts on the morning of the murder.
They especially wanted to know if he ended up anywhere near Portona Park.
You are going to look at the boyfriend, okay? You're going to look at somebody that's very close to the victim. You have to investigate that.
However, Antonio isn't the only person they're investigating.
They were also trying to reach out to see who this Corey Drake was and why he was giving Lisa money.
Could it have something to do with her death?
Or is it possible Corey and Antonio are both dead ends?
While the police were trying to figure out who this Corey Drake was who gave Lisa the money, Sierra Martinez walks back into the precinct.
And what she has to say will take the investigation in an entirely different direction.
She tells detectives that she wasn't totally honest.
Sierra Martinez has just told detectives investigating the murder of her friend, Lisa Velasquez, that she wasn't entirely upfront with them the first time they spoke.
She admitted that she was afraid to talk to them the first time.
What were you afraid of?
Daquan?
The detectives sensed they could be on the verge of a breakthrough.
Lisa's family said that she had gone to Sierra and Daquan's apartment on the night she disappeared because Sierra was being abused by Daquan.
Lisa came over.
But in her initial interview with detectives, Sierra had downplayed Daquan's abuse.
All she said was that they had been arguing.
Now Sierra admits that's not the whole truth.
Sierra, does he hit you?
Yes. Especially since the baby's been born.
Sierra said that Lisa encouraged her to leave Daquan.
But you haven't left him?
I couldn't.
Her friend feels trapped. She has a child with this man.
But Lisa never gave up on her.
Lisa was always there for you whenever you needed her.
Lisa told me that if I ever needed her help, I can call her. So that's what I did. Daquan is that.
She said that she had called Lisa that night because she was fighting with Daquan.
She was being a good friend, and all that comes into play in terms of how she grew up. And now, in her mind, she's like, I'm not going to ever let this happen again. This is my best friend.
Oh my gosh, sweetie.
And like a true friend, Lisa had come through.
She was very upset, so Lisa came over to help her.
And once again, Sierra says that Daquan had stormed out. Although this time she says he took their little girl with him.
Daquan left with the baby, and it was just her and Lisa in the apartment.
We gotta call the cops.
He was so mad when he left. I was afraid he'd do something to her.
Sierra says that the police had come to the apartment.
Police were able to get in touch with Daquan. They called him. He said the child's all right, and they determined that there was no crime committed since he was the father.
And the officers left soon after.
Oh my gosh, sweetie. You're gonna be okay?
Mm-hmm. Everything else pretty much happened like I told you guys.
Sierra said she asked Lisa to stay, but Lisa ended up leaving to go get money from someone.
I ended up staying up and watching TV.
And by the time Daquan returned a few hours later, things had calmed down.
Daquan had left their daughter with a friend.
Sierra says she and Daquan spent the next couple of hours talking things through and eventually made up.
But now she has a nagging sense that there is something Daquan is not telling her.
Sierra basically told detectives that, she thought Daquan had something to do with Lisa's murder.
What makes you think that?
Because he left and he was so mad.
All right, Sierra, thanks for coming in. I'll follow up on that.
But while Sierra is suspicious, the detectives aren't so sure.
Sierra might just be trying to get Daquan in trouble.
Still, after talking to Sierra, the detectives bring Daquan in for questioning.
He vehemently denied that he had anything to do with her murder.
Listen, I don't have any idea what Ciara's talking about.
He said after he left the apartment, he went to stay with a friend.
I felt bad about what was going on, so I left the baby with my friend. I came home and, me and Ciara, we worked it out.
When detectives follow up with Daquan's friend, she confirms what he told detectives.
She said Daquan showed up with his child between 3 and 4 a.m., stayed a couple of hours.
And when the detectives tracked down the call Sierra said they made to the police, that checks out too.
My name is Lisa Marie Velasquez. The reason why I am calling is to report a kidnapping.
They called the police because they were afraid about what was going to happen to the little girl.
There was a domestic dispute that got a little physical.
The records also show that wasn't the first domestic violence complaint originating from Sierra and Daquan's address.
Detectives found out that police were called to the couple's apartment on 4 previous occasions.
And as detectives dig into Sierra and Daquan's criminal histories, more red flags go up.
Detectives were surprised to find out that Daquan spent time in jail before.
Daquan was in jail for attempted murder.
And the details of his indictment seem relevant to Lisa's murder.
He tried to stab his intended victim with a sword.
They're thinking someone who a couple of years ago, was swinging a sword, stabbing someone, and now they have a body that's dismembered.
And not just dismembered. According to the autopsy, hacked apart with a large blade.
Convinced that Daquan had some involvement in Lisa's murder and that Sierra knows more than she's letting on, the detectives bring her in for another round of questioning.
But she sticks to her story, saying Lisa left the apartment after someone sent her some money.
She took a phone with her and everything.
But the detectives keep applying pressure.
This all we want is the truth.
80% of what I told you is the truth. This is when it gets interesting, and I'm willing to take the steps and procedures to get her justice.
The light bulbs went off. She doesn't want to go down with Daquan.
Eventually, Sierra breaks down.
Sierra said Lisa did get money from a friend, but admitted it was just somebody paying her back, and that she made up the story about her leaving the apartment.
It's late. Just stay. Sure, I can crash here.
She's like, that's what I'm here for. I'm not going nowhere.
Sierra said that Lisa had also convinced her to take out an order of protection against Daquan.
She was going to go with me to quit the next day.
So, according to Sierra, Lisa had gone to bed and she had taken a shower.
Meanwhile, after leaving their daughter with a friend, Daquan returns to the apartment.
He went and dropped her off and came right back.
And according to Sierra, he'd walked into the bathroom with a hammer.
He comes in, he didn't even say nothing, he whips out the hammer.
Daquan, what are you doing?
I'm screaming.
Sierra said her screams brought Lisa running into the bathroom.
He's trying to kill me! What is it?
When she fully turned around, he clubbed her.
I don't understand. I guess I never will. Because this is a nightmare I'm not gonna wake up from. She was young. She had her whole life ahead of her. God knows what she could have became in this society. How many other people she could have helped. Does her siblings really need her? Her siblings are lost without her.
Questioned by NYPD detectives investigating Lisa Velasquez's murder, Sierra Martinez has just revealed that her boyfriend, Daquan Wheeler, bludgeoned the 25-year-old to death with a hammer.
On her head? And you hit her with what, the hammer?
One time.
Okay,
One
so what?
good time.
Okay.
And she dropped.
Sierra says she dropped to the floor alongside Lisa and tried to protect her friend.
I was like, stop, 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 stop. No, stop, let me go.
She said, let me call for help, let me take her to the hospital. And Daquan told her to be quiet, he screamed at her, and then he just repeatedly kept hitting her in the head.
I'm hearing it. I'm covering my ears. I'm praying, begging. What are you doing me for? This is the truth. Eventually, she just stopped moving.
Once Lisa was dead, Sierra says Daquan forced her to help him drag Lisa's body back to the bathroom.
Get up. Hurry up.
Daquan said, if you don't help me, I'll kill you and the baby.
Then, with Lisa in the tub, they cleaned up the blood.
Daquan took all his clothes, all Sierra's clothes, everything that had blood on them, and put it in bags.
He also grabbed all of Lisa's personal things and the hammer and put those in the bags too.
He then left the apartment with Sierra. They threw the bags out, and then they went to the store.
They bought more bags and a machete, then brought them back to the apartment.
That's when Daquan started to dismember Lisa's body.
Once again, according to Sierra, it was all Daquan's doing.
What he was doing was inhumane. That's what it was.
Then they loaded everything into Daquan's work van and disposed of the evidence in various spots around the city.
They dumped 2 of the bags in Crotona Park and the rest in another park by the pier.
It's a chilling statement. But is it true?
The detectives locate the rest of Lisa's remains where Sierra indicated.
They also get a warrant to search the couple's apartment.
They were able to find, blood splatter stains throughout the apartment.
Then they bring Daquan in for another round of questioning.
Once in the interrogation room, he denied any involvement in Lisa's murder.
I didn't do anything.
He told police that it was Sierra who did all this.
Lisa told her that I was on a dating app and I wasn't.
He said Sierra became enraged and killed her friend.
He also claimed that Sierra had single-handedly dismembered the body and disposed of it.
So she cleaned before?
She cleaned before I came back to the house.
Came back to the house.
Did you see anything? I didn't see anything.
It was so outrageous and so unbelievable that they knew they had the killer.
The detectives placed Daquan under arrest for murder.
They also arrested Sierra.
But in the end, the prosecutors allow Sierra to plead guilty to conspiracy.
They wanted to have Sierra testify, which is why they gave her the deal that they gave her.
They feel that Daquan had coerced her in helping to dispose of the body.
She was in fear of him. I mean, that's why she called Lisa that night.
When Daquan goes on trial in April of 2022, Sierra is the prosecution's key witness.
But when it's the defense's turn, Daquan continues to put all of the blame on Sierra.
That was a joke. Sierra was small. There ain't no way that Sierra will actually do that alone.
That really set me off. I wanted to go over that chair and make him pay for what he did to her.
And in the end, Daquan does pay.
He was convicted of second-degree murder.
He's sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 27 years.
That's hardly enough to those who loved Lisa.
You mean to tell me, so after 27 years, there's a chance you might get out? They say life in prison. Where's life?
He's still breathing. He might be getting his behind kicked every now and then, but he's still alive.
And then, adding insult to injury, Sierra receives credit for time served. and is released.
When he hit her the first time, okay, you were scared, I get it. But she could have done something.
It's not enough. As far as Ciara, she deserved time. I don't care. You were sick too.
She risked her whole life for you. And then I just chopped this girl up. I'm not satisfied.
Still, for the many people whose lives she touched, Lisa's memory remains an inspiration.
In her short life, she was trying to make a difference. She didn't give up, trying to better herself and better the people around her.
Every day she's thought of, I want people to remember her as a genuine, good sweetheart.
She was fun-loving, nurturing. Oh, God, I miss her so much. I know if she was here, she'd be smacking me in my head. Titi, suck it up and, let's get it going. I truly miss her.
It's Thursday morning in Cobb County, Georgia, a fast-growing community northwest of Atlanta that's home to more than 750,000 people.
Cobb County is the third largest county in the state of Georgia. It's known for just being a serene, suburban-type community. It's a great place.
Louisville, Kentucky is a southern town with old world charm. It's home to the Kentucky Derby and one of the most famous athletes in history, Muhammad Ali. It's also a town with a history of racial conflict and police brutality. In March of 2020, the shooting death of a young woman by Louisville police would spark public outrage as her name became a rallying cry for justice. Louisville is one of America's oldest cities. It was founded in 1778 by Major George Rogers Clark, who helped establish a fort along the Ohio River. Its strategic location was attractive to settlers moving west in search of new opportunities.
The Ohio River was one of the main thoroughfares for travel at that point in those days. It became a hub for merchandise. Later on, it became an industrial city with manufacturing, and then whiskey, the liquor industry became important.
Thanks to Louisville's fertile soil, corn became a major crop, paving the way for what would become known as Kentucky's liquid gold.
Kentucky is the place where bourbon is made. I mean, nobody makes bourbon as well as Kentucky. And so it's sold all over the world. Most of the money in the city generated by the sale of bourbon. When we wanted to bring back our downtown, what did they do? They created Whiskey Row. Again, it's all about the distilled spirits.
But Louisville's growth and prosperity did not come without a dark side.
There's an industry, there's an institution that's built, the institution of slavery, that helps to build the wealth here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky's history with slavery, unfortunately, is one that goes back to the beginning. We had two very large slave pens here in Kentucky. One of those slave pens was actually right on the corner from where our Louisville Cardinals play basketball. So you have a slave pen that was located right at that corner where millions of folks a year go see the Louisville Cardinals play, but I don't think many people think about that.
Despite emancipation in 1865, restrictive zoning laws were passed to keep Louisville's black citizens in segregated neighborhoods. Yet they still thrived.
One of the oldest African-American neighborhoods is called Smoketown. And that's where many of the families begin to build their homes and to build their families and do their best to become successful.
The reason it was called Smoketown was because of the industries in that area and the smokestacks. In its heyday, you had 3 movie houses. You had the most famous nightclubs and bars.
It was really wonderful, and you knew you could go have a fabulous meal on a Sunday and listen to jazz or listen to someone playing a horn, but it was a very creative, artistic area.
The West End had been decades ago known as the Harlem of the South.
Those communities were thriving even when I came along, only to be basically destroyed by urban renewal in the 60s.
Most of Louisville's black citizens were pushed to the west side of the city, creating a bitter division that remains to this day.
A line down the city divides kind of the West End from the downtown area. People call it the 9th Street Divide.
Everybody grows up here knowing that, the West End is predominantly black. The East End is more predominantly white. It looks newer, it's, there's all these, healthy grocery stores, farmers markets, but then you go right back under and all you see is gas stations and, just mini food marts. Death rates are higher in the West End than it is the East End because of the access to healthier options of food. The air quality is better in the East End.
Many feel that Louisville's stark racial divide has also created inequality in policing.
Louisville's policing has been very directed towards the West End of Louisville.
I want to say it's like over 50% of the city's budget is in policing. Black and brown folks in the city knew and have known that the policing has just been, uneven, to put it nicely. Black and brown folks have not been safe.
Because of that culture, because of the history behind that institution, I get nervous. I have PTSD. I'm stressed out when I see a police officer. I get concerned for my life. I get concerned for the people who are around me as well.
And in 2020, one police shooting would thrust the city into the national spotlight. It's a little after midnight on March 13th. 26-year-old Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, 27-year-old Kenneth Walker, are at home watching a movie.
They went on a date night, and then they came back home, got comfy. They were watching Freedom Riders in bed. Breonna kind of dozed off. Kenneth was not fully asleep, but you're kind of super relaxed in bed, about to fall asleep type thing. And they hear a bang at the door. Kenneth grabs his gun. He's thinking it's someone trying to break in because it's just after midnight. They're not expecting anyone. The door busts open. Kenneth shoots. And then after that, it's a barrage of bullets from every direction.
But the intruders aren't robbers. They're Louisville police officers carrying out a search warrant. When the smoke clears, one officer is wounded and Breonna is lying dead in the hallway. Exactly what happened that night and why will remain a mystery for months to come. And when the truth comes out, it will spark a national debate about police use of deadly force on Black Americans. Breonna Taylor was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the oldest of two daughters, raised by a single mother.
Breonna comes from a very strong line of other Black people in her family. Her mother, Tamika Palmer, an incredible woman who has so much love, and you can just feel the love that she has for Breonna.
Breonna's mother relocated the family to Louisville in 2008, and Breonna made an immediate impact on her community.
She was that person. If she knew your name, if you had a moment with her, you were locked in forever. She cared about you. She was a loving person.
After graduating high school in 2011, Breonna attended the University of Kentucky. She left the school the following year to become an emergency medical technician.
Powerful women that worked in the medical field and loved helping ran deep in her family. Her aunts are in that field, her mother. So she kind of carried on their legacy.
It takes a type of person to, want to be in the medical field. Like, you have to have a passion to help people.
Breonna became friends with Kenneth Walker online, but in 2016, they took their relationship to the next level.
Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker remind me of Whitley and Dwayne from A Different World. I think Breonna kind of tried to play it off like, oh no, we're just buddies. But she always had something there for him. They were the couple that built each other up. If one was doing well, the other was trying to match that or go above it, and then so forth. They were just always trying to climb, always making new goals. Speaking with Kenneth Walker's parents, they said Kenneth got himself together when he started dating Breonna Taylor. They said, you know, he walked different. His swag changed. You know, he was bragging about his credit score. He was a go-getter. Miss Walker always says that she couldn't picture a better woman for her son.
By 2020, the two were making big plans for their future.
She and Kenneth Walker were going to get married, and they were talking about having a family.
They had a baby name picked out already. Kenneth Walker had his mother's ring ready to give it to Breonna Taylor shortly.
She was following all the rules. She was doing all the right things. She was just, you know, working her way up in life and really had a bright future ahead of her.
But now that future has been destroyed in a hail of gunfire.
How are we supposed to feel secure in our own homes knowing that anybody can just barge in, knowing the police can just barge in and, you know, kill us like that?
Breonna Taylor's apartment is located on Springfield Drive in South Louisville. The area is normally peaceful, but just after midnight on March 13th, 2020, residents bear witness to a violent police raid.
One neighbor described that she's looking out the window and she's hearing an officer outside her window saying, "Ram it, ram it, ram it." A SWAT vehicle rams through her gate. She's thinking there's some battle going on outside her apartment, not knowing what has just happened to her neighbor right next door. Minutes later, we have Kenneth Walker walking out, hands up. There's dogs right in front of him barking. He's just confused. He's saying, what did I do? What did I do? What's going on? She's dead. She's dead. She's in a dead.
The shooting initially draws little attention. That afternoon, the Louisville Police Department releases an official statement.
Early this morning, we had a critical incident involving one of our officers who was shot and another person at the scene who was killed.
Officers knocked on the door several times and announced their presence as police who were there with a search warrant. The officers forced entry into the exterior door and were immediately met by gunfire. Sergeant Mattingly sustained a gunshot wound and returned fire.
At first, the narrative was simple, essentially just saying there was a drug race, suspect killed, that was it, point blank, period.
According to the report, the officers entered Breonna's apartment as part of an ongoing investigation, an investigation that involved one of Breonna's ex-boyfriends.
The authorities essentially were investigating Jamarcus Glover, who had a record for being involved in drugs, drug trafficking, ties to a trap house on the West Louisville side of the community. What brought them to Breonna Taylor's door is Breonna had a relationship with him in the past. That was essentially one of the main links they used to say, okay, you know, assuming she must be connected with him.
Detectives obtained the search warrant based on evidence that Jamarcus was sending Breonna suspicious packages.
It was listed on the affidavit that was used on the warrant that these suspected packages were going to Breonna Taylor's home and they could have possibly had drugs in them.
That's what the justification was for this. And so they got a no-knock warrant because they said that they had some reasonable suspicion that that person would be there.
The warrant didn't require police to announce their presence, but the officers involved say they did anyway. When they stepped inside, Kenneth fired a shot, hitting Officer Mattingly. He and 2 other officers returned to fire.
If this is the entrance door, her bedroom's all the way back here at the end of the hallway. Kenneth, has his gun. Door busts open, he shoots and kind of tries to go in this bedroom. And I'm not sure if, Breonna didn't get down fast enough or whatnot, but she falls at the end of that hallway.
Breonna Taylor was struck, I believe, 6 times, 5 or 6 times.
Check that wrist, dude. Check the wrist.
Breonna died from her wounds at 12:48 a.m. By 1 a.m., Kenneth was arrested for the attempted murder of a police officer.
He's taken to police headquarters, he's questioned. He says he still has, blood and stuff on his shirt. And they start questioning right away about what happened.
Just you and her? Does anybody else live there?
He admits to shooting a police officer after he thought it was someone breaking in his home. He didn't know it was a police officer when he fired his gun.
So you just fired off one?
Yeah, just one. That was just a warning. I don't know who's coming to this door. The door just got kicked out the hinges, so I'm scared.
There are a lot of situations when it's fight or flight. And the first thing you're gonna do is protect your home.
On Saturday, March 14th, Kenneth pleads not guilty to the charges. The following day, Breonna's name is finally released to the public. Louisville police consider the shooting justified, portraying the shooting as a drug bust gone bad. But Breonna's loved ones push back. They flood social media with messages about Breonna.
The only reason why any of this ever made news was because her family was relentless in making sure someone listened and someone did something about what happened to her.
It soon becomes evident there's much more to the story than initially reported.
If you look at the pictures from the site that day, the number of bullet strikes in the home is overwhelming. Bullets inside of drawers, that went through the wood. I mean, bullets everywhere.
A no-knock warrant gives police the authority to enter a suspect's home without warning. Their use, however, is often controversial.
They can just ram the door in because they don't want to give a criminal the opportunity to start bagging things up and throwing things away and getting rid of the evidence that they need in order to bring charges.
Of course, most times officers are assuming, it's drug dealers or someone that's a threat to society. When you're wrong, if you make a mistake and warrants or no-knock warrants, that is traumatizing.
In the weeks following the death of 26-year-old health worker Breonna Taylor, the story draws increasing media attention. Many credit Breonna's family for getting her story out.
What started to bring this story forward is the people who were involved finally being listened to, finally catching the ear of media saying, we don't have the whole story here.
COVID had just hit, and that was all that was basically taking up airspace at the time. The first, I would say, time widespread people start hearing about Breonna Taylor is around late April-ish, which is still a few weeks after it happened.
When I first heard about her and I heard that she was an EMT, I'm like, this is absolutely crazy. My heart went out to her.
I felt more connected to her considering she was a Black woman. I'm a young Black woman that lives here. She lived here. That could have been me. That could have been my sister. That could have been my auntie, my mother.
The shooting comes at a time when awareness about the use of deadly force by police is growing throughout the country.
Felt like every day, every week, there was another one. Hey, did you hear about the police killing? Which one? People we're just incredulous. How is this possibly happening?
Now Breonna's name has been added to the list of victims. In late April, her mother files a wrongful death suit. The family's civil rights attorney accuses police of trying to cover up the fact that the raid was a disaster, starting with the search warrant.
Former Detective Joshua James said that he verified with the U.S. Postal Inspector that spoke with multiple neighbors as well. They said that night they didn't hear anyone announce, no one say police, and that creates this huge issue because it creates this blind wall of what could have happened, what did happen, and why it happened on March 13th.
By 2020, Black Lives Matter had grown from a hashtag into a powerful movement, and it quickly picks up on Breonna's shooting. But it will take another, even more explosive case to give Breonna's family hope for justice.
Man, y'all don't believe me. I'm not that kind of guy.
On May 25th, the nation watches in horror as cell phone video of George Floyd's death at the hands of Minneapolis police goes viral.
I can't breathe.
We were already in the midst of our own storm with what had happened with Breonna Taylor, and like so many things, was captured on video, cell phone video, of this man laying on the street saying that, "I can't breathe," and you hear him call for his mother. After the death of George Floyd, I think folks just said, all right, we got to do something here.
The widespread media coverage brings new attention to similar cases, including Breonna's. And on May 28th, the 911 call from Kenneth Walker is made public, raising even more questions about that night.
911 operator Harris, where is their emergency? I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
When that 911 call was released, what it did was it put people in Breonna Taylor's apartment, because what we knew was that Kenneth Walker was charged for shooting at this police officer. And what we knew is that he's saying he didn't know it was a police officer. He thought it was just people breaking into the apartment.
It seems so clear to anybody who listens to it that, you know, that what happened, how it went down, was not the way it was reported. He was terrified, and he shot in self-defense.
You could hear him talk about the fact that he didn't know if Breonna was okay.
Is she alert able to talk to you? No, she's not. Breathe.
It was sad to hear. It was hard to hear.
In response, hundreds of outraged residents flood the streets in protest. Soon, violence erupts between protesters and police.
There were shots of people rocking, ambulances, the steps of the Hall of Justice were covered. It looked like a war zone in the city. I remember being out there, and there's tear gas going off, there's pepper balls being thrown.
But this is only the beginning.
It was like, I have to do something. Like, it caused you to want to do something about it.
The fire had been ignited.
May 28th showed the city, the country, the world that Louisville and the people who live here were not playing when they said they want change and they want answers, and that they want it now.
Following the murder of George Floyd, protests break out across the country. The words, "I can't breathe," become a battle cry for social change. But in Louisville, the crowds are chanting for Breonna Taylor.
Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. That's what you heard every night, over and over again.
Folks in the street just wanted to, remind everyone why we were there, and that's because Breonna Taylor was murdered.
On Monday, June 1st, another name joins the list of those shot and killed by law enforcement. 53-year-old David McAtee.
David McAtee, or Yaya as he's often called in the community, had a barbecue place. He's really a mainstay in the community. And so he was out there, he was grilling. It was late at night, and there were people there. It was at the very beginning of the protest. Technically, there was a curfew, but where he was is significantly removed from the center of town. The National Guard showed up and may have issued a warning or two, and then boom, all of a sudden it was tear gas, which of course caused a panic. And, you know, they were also using tactics like what's called kettling, where they would cut off city streets. It was kind of like a maze down there.
According to the police, someone in the crowd fired shots at the guardsmen and officers, who then returned fire. A soldier's bullet hit McAtee in the chest, killing him.
There was absolutely no reason for the National Guard to have been there in the first place. Absolutely none. And there's certainly absolutely no reason to have been shooting into a crowd the way that they were. So, you know, and now we have another community member who lost his life.
I think most of the community members were scared of this could easily happen again.
Less than 24 hours later, the mayor fires Louisville Police Chief David Conrad. The following month, the city council passes Breonna's Law, banning the use of no-knock warrants and requiring body cameras for any officer executing a search warrant.
All across the country now, some are feeling that no-knock warrants aren't worth the cost of life that often happens when they bust through that door.
In addition, the charges against Kenneth Walker are dropped, and the FBI announces they are opening their own investigation. But the controversy rages on. On June 5th, 2020, the day that would have been Breonna's 27th birthday, Louisville sees its biggest demonstration yet. Thousands of protesters converge on Jefferson Square Park.
So you have, you know, people in the Black community coming together, people from all communities coming together, occupying this space, providing water, providing food, snacks, providing sign-ups to, you know, join the organization, to stay in contact about the next march and ways to protest that are safe.
Louisville is not alone in honoring Breonna. Birthday memorials are held in cities across America and other parts of the world. Celebrities such as Beyonce and Oprah Winfrey add their voices to the movement. And by midsummer, a petition to charge the officers involved in Breonna's death has gathered 10 million signatures. Jefferson Square Park has also been given a new name.
They decided to call it Injustice Square after the death of Breonna Taylor. And there was never a time of day, morning, noon, or night, that it was not filled with people. We saw hundreds, if not thousands, marching every night, every day, every night. You knew that people were going to be out and continuing to protest. This continued for months and months and months.
The folks at the center of the protest community here in Louisville didn't let it die. This incredible memorial popped up from community artists giving their love and time and honor to Breonna and then ultimately to other victims of police violence.
After 3 months, however, there is still no official response, and tensions are on the rise.
Who in here is a Black woman? You know what I mean? Like, who out here is a Black woman? Raise your hand. It made it real because it's not just Breonna Taylor's life, but am I next? Is it my life next?
George Floyd's murder showed how important video evidence can be in holding officers accountable for their actions. But should we have to rely on private citizens with cell phones to provide that evidence?
A lot of sort of police reform has been talking about wanting to make sure that police body cams and dash cams are in place and are running. I'm not particularly sure that that's going to make a whole lot of difference. It seems like if police still feel that they can act with impunity, it doesn't even matter what gets caught on camera. They're still going to do what they do.
The protest and newly named Injustice Square are entering their 4th month when the Louisville Police Department finally issues a report on the shots fired in Breonna Taylor's apartment.
The actual report that was filed was fairly minuscule and didn't really sort of tell the whole story about what happened that night.
LMPD is just known to do some shady things. They have had history of trying to, hide things, shove things under the rug.
Frankly, every person of color in Louisville already kind of knew the narrative about LMPD. This was obviously not the first time that they had done something like this or disregarded people's rights or frankly killed people that should not, did not commit a crime.
A grand jury is impaneled to decide whether any of the officers involved will face criminal charges.
The grand jury heard the testimony. They voted on the charges that they were presented with.
So we're watching everything kind of come to a head now. We're waiting to see what the fallout from that will be.
On September 23rd, the jury renders its verdict.
Only one of the 3 officers even had a charge levied against him.
Brett Hankinson has been fired, and he is going to trial, but not for shooting Breonna Taylor, for shooting into haphazardly other apartments.
The other 2 continue to be, our police officers in the LMPD. That honestly was a huge blow to the community, just to know that, yet again, no one was going to be held responsible for this killing.
The reaction on social media is fierce. Within hours, protesters once again flood the streets of Louisville.
The outcome of the grand jury decision was not what the thousands of people who had been protesting for months and months expected at all. Hearing Attorney General Daniel Cameron come out and publicly say that only Officer Brett Hankinson was going to be charged for shooting the walls in the apartment spoke volumes to the community.
Absolutely no one has been charged for any bullets that actually entered Breonna Taylor's body.
What that said to everyone marching, to everyone crying, to everyone who really felt now was the time for change was that these walls and everything else is more valuable than a black life.
Once again, the protest escalated into violence. In the chaos, 2 officers were shot. In an attempt to restore peace, Kentucky Governor Amy Beshear asked his Attorney General to release the details of the grand jury proceedings. In taped interviews, Officers Mattingly and Hankinson both testify that they knocked on Breonna's door and announced themselves prior to entering.
It probably lasted between 45 seconds and a minute, banging on the door.
And this went on for probably 30, 45 seconds of banging and announcing, knocking and announcing.
Another key neighbor or witness is the gentleman upstairs, essentially right above Breonna. And when I spoke with him, he said he did not hear anything. But then we come to the grand jury, and those documents come out. They say that that neighbor did say he heard someone knock and announce after he said no.
Jurors also saw an interview with Detective Cosgrove, who fired the shot that killed Breonna.
At the same time I'm seeing these flashes, I know that John Mattingly is at my feet. I am also not hearing anything. It is completely mute.
The evidence is intended to prove that the jury's ruling was correct. However, following the release of information, 3 of the jurors speak out against the Attorney General.
Some grand jurors have charged that he bungled and did not present everything that he could have to the grand jury.
What the grand juror said happened is that in that room, they would ask questions, hey, can we charge so-and-so officer for this? Or can we see this evidence? And they said Daniel Cameron and his team would say, no, we'll circle back to that. And they never would circle back. Or they would say, no, that's not important. And they said that Daniel Cameron and his team essentially said, we're only interested in wanton endangerment because that's all we think can stick. The jurors said we wanted to try, we wanted to hold them accountable, and it just didn't happen. That's what the insight they gave the community about what happens behind closed doors in the justice and legal system. And it was kind of something a lot of people of color knew, or they felt just watching all these cases happen, and what they feel is justice never unfolds.
And even more fuel will be added to the fire when dramatic body cam footage is finally released.
Hey, she's down at the end of the hall.
After months of confusion and speculation, Breonna Taylor's family and their supporters are finally getting some answers. The unprecedented release of grand jury evidence, along with police audio and video recordings, capture the tragic events of March 13th as they unfolded.
From the moment that door is breached, there were hiccups, failures, mishaps. Essentially, everything that was supposed to happen in the planning didn't happen that night. The first person in line was supposed to have this shield. They're supposed to be basically protected from whatever was behind that door. They didn't have that shield. There was a certain line and order each person was supposed to be in so that they have all the clear line of vision for what's happening and so forth, and that was broken. The officers don't even step more than, I think they get in a few feet into Breonna's doorway before the shots go off. In the files, the officer said they saw a flash and they thought it was gunshots. There was also a TV on that was flashing in the bedroom and gunshots coming from the side. And we know now that Kenneth Walker, as he said from the beginning, only shot one shot. So we know those bullets weren't coming from Kenneth Walker's gun. Not only is Brett Hankison firing through closed blinds in an apartment, his men are in there. For all he knew, he was putting his other fellow officers in danger. This whole thing happened less than a few minutes. I mean, it was door open, boom. And then boom, 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 like brrr, all over the place.
Put your hands up! Walk there!
One of the major aspects that set the tone for everything was seeing the footage, the audio, and hearing the tone after Breonna is killed. An officer asked him if he was shot, Kenneth saying no, and the officer saying, well, that's unfortunate.
There's somebody in there dead? Get to my girlfriend. Who was shooting at us?
Hearing that the police didn't even know that she was dead inside, hearing that they didn't send an EMT or EMS or help in there to help her, hearing the officers laugh and giggle.
No.
The whole tone came off as a lack of regard.
Ma'am, can you hear us? Old Metro Police Department.
The first thing is to get somebody to help her, right? And with her being an EMT, that was one of the things she would have done for somebody else. She didn't even get that same treatment at all.
Keep walking! Stop! Keep walking!
After the recordings are released, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland announces that the Justice Department is investigating police practices in Louisville, Kentucky.
The federal government feels that the actions of LMPD have been so heinous that it warrants an investigation to see if there are literally either policies on the books or practices that are not on the books, but that are essentially policies that are violating people's civil rights.
Now you have hope that will shed some light, and not only shed light, but bring about changes that will be needed and are needed in the police department.
The city of Louisville agrees to pay Breonna's family $12 million to settle the civil suit. As a part of the settlement, the city promises a slew of police reforms. Although no charges are filed, the officers involved are eventually disciplined.
Former Detective Joshua James was fired for lying on the warrant. Officer Mattingly was also fired, and Cosgrove was also fired.
May 28, 2021 marked the one-year anniversary of the protest in Louisville. Injustice Square filled with activists, just as it had every day since the protest began.
There were people from all walks of life who were there. You have people who are business persons, who are CEOs. You have artists. You have all types of people, teachers and kids, you know. You have children. I mean, it was very intergenerational and very intercultural and intracultural as well.
The main message was that Black Lives Matter. We're not just out in these streets just marching, just to be marching. Justice has not been served for anybody, and we're still gonna make our voices heard.
Justice for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and others. We continue to fight today's injustices.
That's what Louisville showed the world, is that if you want to change and move forward, everyone has to do something about it.
Although her life was taken too soon, Breonna Taylor continues to touch the lives of others in her community and throughout the world.
Breonna Taylor was definitely the heart, the soul, the core for so many people that she basically touched and impacted. And you can even see that past her death, just the reach that she has made with, you know, the soul that's been left behind.
We're gonna try to keep her name alive. She deserves that. Her family deserves that. I just hope she's resting in peace right now.
Brunswick, Georgia is a quiet and picturesque town with plenty of old world charm. But it's also a city riddled with corruption and racial division. And in February 2020, the modern day lynching of a young unarmed black man named Ahmaud Arbery, who was hunted down and killed in broad daylight, will expose a political system that protects his killers at all costs. Ahmaud's murder will also help ignite a worldwide movement for racial justice, the likes of which the world has never seen before. Brunswick is a beautiful port city located halfway between Savannah and Jacksonville, Florida.
There's just nothing like this place. We have the Signal Bridge. When you go across it at the right time of day, when the floodplain is just right, I mean, it is awe-inspiring. It's just something that to behold the rich beauty of nature.
I can go to St. Simon's or to Jekyll and enjoy just being out there looking at the water, finding a quiet place. But for me, what makes it beautiful is the people here.
Brunswick's storied black history dates back to the Civil War. Slaves who joined and aided the Union on their march through the South were eventually granted land in return for their service.
That is why Sherman wrote Special Order 15 that designated all of the land from Charleston, South Carolina to St. Johns River, 35 miles inland, belonged to black folk.
Special Order 15 became known as the 40 acres and a mule rule. Thousands of newly freed slaves became landowners, and with them came their knowledge to grow what would become known as the South's white gold. Along with cotton, rice became one of the most important and abundant crops in the region.
The notion is that cotton was king, but rice was queen. And the idea of that happening caused the plantations here to be extremely wealthy situations. One of the people that they talk about that owned slaves was a guy by the name of Pierce Butler. Mr. Butler was really a gambler, and in gambling he lost a lot of money, but he owned more slaves than anybody else east of the Mississippi in this country. So what it did is it caused us as people, when the plantation owners had to depart here, it caused black folk to be in a position of doing what they needed to do for themselves.
Soon, Brunswick had a thriving black economy with one of the busiest ports on the East Coast.
In 1910, the county was majority black. A number of black businesses sprung up here. It was our own little black Wall Street. And we had a number of people that flourished.
But Brunswick's booming economy came with a dark side. Wealthy white industrialists took notice of the powerhouse the city had become and made moves to take the land back from its black residents.
When they saw an opportunity that we were doing well at, and they wanted it, they just took it.
The hotels that was owned by black folk went out of business. The swimming pool that was owned by black folk was covered up in sand.
The new powers that be shifted Brunswick's economy from agriculture and industry to tourism. To survive, African Americans had to take low-paying jobs at the new white-owned resorts that were springing up all around the city.
The pay rate for these positions were kept very low, and so people became more impoverished.
We've lost homes, we've lost businesses. We don't own nothing. The program of how all of this is used in order to bring about an economic devastation in our community is clever, consistent, and it's criminal.
The political power that black residents once had in Brunswick has also disappeared.
That imbalance plays itself out in a lot of different manners, because in politics, you're going to take care of the high taxpayers, right? And to heck with those people who are barely making it.
And in 2020, the murder of a young black man would show the world just how powerful and criminal Brunswick's political connections could be. Around 12 p.m. on February 23, 2020, 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery leaves his mother's house in Brunswick to go for a run.
It was a daily routine. He made that a part of his healthy development process with the desire to be a professional athlete. And so he just ran across the road into the Satilla Shores.
The neighborhood of Satilla Shores is a beautiful, tree-lined, older neighborhood, a lot of beautiful houses. I would call it your standard middle-class 1 to 2 story houses. Some of them have garages, some of them have pools, and just a nice neighborhood. One of the Glenn County police officers and his wife lived in that particular neighborhood. You had a lot of older people who had lived there a number of years. So you had a number of retirees who lived there, but you also had new families living there.
You have residents of varying incomes there, but mostly middle-class homes. It's very quiet. It also sits just across the highway from the Fancy Bluff neighborhood, which is where Ahmaud Arbery grew up in and lived.
Ahmaud would never make it out of Satilla Shores. An hour later, just after 1 p.m., Brunswick police respond to shots fired in the area.
We have our first responding officer who hears the shots. He heads down Satilla Shore and he pulls up. And what he's confronted with is Mr. Arbery lying in a pool of blood in the middle of Holmes Drive.
It's gonna be a black male, middle of the roadway.
There are 2 other men standing there. At this point in time, this officer is all alone. He has no idea what has transpired. He has no idea who is armed and who isn't armed, and who's a friend and who's not a friend. Meaning, are these people all together? He doesn't know. He also is not medically trained. So the best he can do is call this in.
No.
There was absolutely nothing EMS, the fire truck, or a hospital could have done for Mr. Arbery due to the nature of his wounds and the extensive blood loss that he had suffered.
It will be months before the truth of what happened comes out. And when it does, Ahmaud's name will become a rallying cry for social justice. Ahmaud Arbery was born in Brunswick, Georgia, the youngest child of Wanda Cooper Jones and Marcus Arbery Sr.
He probably didn't necessarily live the life that people stereotype Black people into, which is poor, poverty, terrible upbringing. He came from a loving and supportive home.
They were always good people. They were folk that you would consider your friend, that you could trust.
Oh, I love this family. He loved this family dearly. His mom, that was his queen. Like, that was his queen, I would catch rides with them. And I used to be in the back seat. He was in the front. I used to kind of observe how he was with his mother. And like, they had fun times. They had serious times. And, but they were always like, tight. He loved his mom dearly. And his family, really, because he had cousins that he hadn't met or talked to in a certain amount of time that, once he rekindled that relationship with them, they became tight. So it was kind of just like that, just family. Like, once he found out that's my family right there, it was just a different type of energy he gave you. It kind of like, I don't know, just kind of become closer with you. And so he just kind of that type of person. Like, if you family, you family. I don't care when I met you, things like that. I'm gonna take you in like me. Like, I'm gonna welcome you in with open arms. Like, you just that type of person.
Growing up, Ahmaud was well loved by everyone who knew him.
He would give you literally the shirt off his back, if he felt like you needed it.
He was also a talented athlete. Ahmaud started playing football when he was only 5 years old and went on to play linebacker for his high school team.
Every Black kid growing up, in urban areas, dreams are like, okay, I'm gonna make it in sports. And, Ma talked about, going to the NFL one day.
There are a few athletes that have come out of Brunswick, and Ahmaud wanted to be one of them.
Those dreams never materialized, but Ahmaud continued to stay fit while going to technical college to become an electrician.
He was very active in maintaining his well-being, his mental health, and the way he did that was by running.
I kind of felt like he had this idea of like, you gotta be in shape to chase your dream. He definitely wanted a wife and kids, a family, big house and whatnot. He would just, speak about becoming an electrician, owning his own business, passing it on to his kids and things like that.
But now, Ahmaud's once promising future has died with him. Police inform Ahmaud's family that he was killed while committing a burglary in Satilla Shores.
I got a text, saying my closest friend just died in some burglary, some weird burglary. It just didn't make sense to me. I went in the bathroom, just kind of cried my eyes out. Felt like a part of me died when he died.
Because of social media, news of Ahmaud's death sweeps through the rest of Brunswick within minutes.
About 1:30, that notification popped up on my phone because people talk fast around here, right? And that's the narrative. Someone broke in a house, homeowner, shot him.
There was this narrative that was kind of already being created about his character, and it was treated like an open and shut case.
Ahmaud's death and the truth behind it will ignite a furious fight for justice and expose the dark truth about just how divided a city can be.
We had been calling for a federal investigation in the corruption of this city for years.
The interweb of connectivity speaks to something far more nefarious and far more entrenched that says we don't do something, this ain't gonna be the only one.
From its Victorian-era historic district to the beautiful surrounding islands, Brunswick, Georgia attracts tourists year-round. But amidst the wealth and splendor, there are areas still reeling from decades of poverty.
Even if you walk a few blocks outside of downtown, you have boarded up homes, you have some condemned properties. So there's still a lot of progress left to be made in the city.
25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery was hoping to be a part of that progress. Instead, he's been shot to death in a neighborhood near his mother's house.
And how'd you say you got that blood on you? He had his arm.
The two men responsible are 64-year-old retired investigator Gregory McMichael and his son, 34-year-old Travis McMichael. They are still on the scene when police arrive, along with their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan.
The story they gave was get Ahmaud. He had been breaking into houses in the neighborhood, and they had tried to get him to stop. Just they were going to do a citizen's arrest, but they couldn't get him to stop. Greg, he's retired, chief investigator, so I'm assuming he knew some type of law.
According to the McMichaels, there had been several recent break-ins in the area. So when they saw Ahmaud running through the neighborhood, they decided to chase after him.
I'm posting some publications in the back of my truck. I look up, this guy comes hauling ass down the street. I'm talking about in a dead run. He's not jogging. So I haul ass back in the house and said, Travis, the guy's running down the street. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So I haul ass into my bedroom, get my 357 Magnum. Glen County PD issue, by the way, that I toted years ago. Travis grabs his shotgun, because we don't know if this guy's armed.
They hop in their car. They don't call 911 still. They chase him. They chase him past William Bryan's home, who calls out, y'all got him. William Bryan hops in his truck, proceeds to follow him.
He's running down an Am Road, and in the meantime, we're hollering, stop, 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 we want to talk to you.
The men say they finally caught up to Ahmaud and confronted him.
And then Travis jumps out with the shotgun, and he runs up here, and the guy, at some point, the guy more or less attacks him, runs towards him, and they get in a fight over the damn shotgun.
He claimed Ahmaud attacked him first.
During the struggle, Travis shoots Ahmaud 3 times.
They never denied that they shot him. Travis never denied that he shot him.
When he's questioned at the scene, Travis claims he'd seen Ahmaud lurking around a neighbor's property a few times over the past few months.
He was first on the property, I think about October 25th. He's there again November, and then there again, I think, December. We don't really know that he's there again until February. So he was there about 4 times before.
The McMichaels say one particular incident in October of 2019 had them on high alert.
Travis said he saw Ahmaud that day, and Ahmaud flashed a weapon at him. He went and told his dad. His dad got up, and Diego, the neighborhood watch guy, I guess is what they called themselves, and they tried to clear the house. They called out Glen County PD, but they didn't come across Ahmaud that day.
Officers obtained multiple videos that show Ahmaud at the property at least 4 times prior, including the video from the day of the shooting.
Mr. Arbery just walks into the camera view, stands in front of the house. It's a bright, beautiful, sunshiny day. It's a little bit before 1 o'clock, and he's wandering around. He looked around the house. Didn't touch anything, didn't steal anything, didn't take anything, didn't vandalize anything.
None of the videos, including the one from the day of the shooting, ever show Ahmaud with a weapon. Still, based on the initial investigation, no charges are filed against the 3 men involved. Ahmaud's friends and family are outraged.
The early reporting was just a press release sent from Glynn County Police to local stations that basically said that these men shot and killed someone in self-defense. There wasn't anything more to it than that.
Ahmaud supporters demand justice. But by the next day, it becomes clear they aren't likely to get it.
Greg McMichael had previously been Jackie Johnson's chief investigator at the district attorney's office. At that point in time, of course, the law enforcement officers called over to the district attorney's office seeking guidance, which is a total normal practice. She had one of her assistant district attorneys respond that they were going to have to recuse themselves off that particular case.
And she'd asked a nearby district attorney, George Barnhill, to actually look at this case and make a recommendation. He recommended to Jackie Johnson that there be no charges filed. Again, open and shut. And so there was really no investigation.
On February 29th, Ahmaud is laid to rest. His funeral becomes a rallying cry for answers.
Being at that funeral, seeing my brother in the casket like that, really, that's when it like hit me. That he's gone forever. For sure, I want answers because it just, none of it just made sense. The more truth we found out, it became worse and worse.
Georgia's citizens' arrest laws date back to the 1800s. Many believe they have racist roots that once allowed slave patrols and lynch mobs to take the law into their own hands. Was Ahmaud's death proof that history has an unfortunate way of repeating?
Why were you chasing him to effect the citizen's arrest? What was the crime? When did the crime occur? It doesn't work like that. You were afraid of a black man. You were afraid of the color of his skin. You felt, because of your upbringing, that he was a threat to you and your well-being. He wasn't. You did it out of fear of what it is you thought to be true, and it's not right. And a lot of people have a tendency to operate off that. When you're ignorant of stuff, that's how you move. You're afraid of it. You're resistant to it. You'll go against it. You don't want to get to know it. But the more you're informed about something, then the easier it is to maneuver. In this particular situation, no, you were afraid of him. He was black, and that's not what you're accustomed to seeing in that neighborhood. It caught you off guard. You saw a black man running down in the neighborhood. Yeah, you saw him on camera going into a new development. He didn't take anything. At no point in time you saw on that camera he took anything. He always came in there empty-handed and left empty-handed.
Glynn County, where Brunswick is located, has a diverse population. But Satilla Shores, the community where Ahmaud Arbery was shot, is predominantly white.
It sits near some waterfront properties just off of I-17, which is a major thoroughfare in Glynn County. And it's not gated. I think a lot of people would be under the impression that it is, but it's not a gated community. It is a public street that anyone is free to run through.
In the wake of Ahmaud's death, some in the community came out in support of the McMichaels.
From the white community's standpoint, there was no malice or hatred in their heart. They were doing it to protect the neighborhood.
We need more guys like him. A good guy with a gun. That's the national narrative, right?
Even though his family and friends are told Ahmaud was killed while committing a burglary, they aren't buying the narrative. At the front of the fight for truth is Ahmaud's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones.
She was very crucial. I believe that Her, along with some of his friends, led a social media campaign called I Run With Maud that was used to kind of raise money in his honor, but also to hopefully lead to a fuller investigation.
She was trying to get in touch with Barnhill, the DA in Waycross, and he would not even return her calls.
As she digs into Ahmaud's case, his mother notices holes in the story, starting with the 911 call made by Greg McMichael just moments before Ahmaud was shot and killed.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm right here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street.
Where at Satilla Shores?
That was what he said his emergency was. I'm out here in Satilla Shores, and there's a black man running down the street.
A review of the officer's body cam footage also reveals how informally they treated the crime scene and their questioning of the McMichaels.
Hey, Greg.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
You're doing this. I do know Greg. How you doing?
I know y'all will take him down.
Yeah, he's going to have the interview.
Yeah. Y'all don't put him in cuffs, are you?
No. Why would he be in cuffs?
There's a level of comfort there, speaking with the McMichaels and William Bryan as if they were old friends.
If I could have got a shot at the guy, I'd shot him myself.
They were also allowed to go home, change, and then come to the police station to be interviewed. There was no immediacy to actually learn what had happened prior to Ahmaud being killed.
The autopsy report undermines their claim of self-defense as well.
He'd been shot in the arm and had also been shot in the chest with the first shotgun blast. That was consistent with him trying to do this, to push that shotgun away.
The first shot is to tell, when it's right here, what happened to make you shoot him right in his chest? What happened for you to shoot an unarmed man point blank in his chest with a shotgun?
Greg McMichael's connection to his former employer, District Attorney Jackie Johnson, also becomes a concern in the fight for justice.
Greg McMichael revealed to the Glenn County police officers who had responded who he was, a retired law enforcement officer who had previously been Jackie Johnson's chief investigator at the district attorney's office.
I was chief investigator with the DA's office for 23 years.
Johnson had recused herself from the case early on, but the lack of charges against her former employee and his son still raised questions about preferential treatment.
She sent it to somebody that she knew would still cover them, protect them, so she knew exactly what she was doing.
District Attorney George Barnhill in neighboring Waycross, Georgia, took over the case, but he too declined to file charges.
When he was officially assigned the case, he'd written a 2-page memo essentially saying that these men were in the right and that they were justified in killing Ahmaud Arbery.
What's the story with why it was sent to George Barnhill? Oh my golly. His son works in Jackie Johnson's office, which is why he was motivated to write a diatribe of inhumanity in his assessment of the case, because he's connected as well.
That caused George Barnhill to have to recuse himself.
The more we learned, the more we figured out there was a lot of lies being told, that there were nefarious objectives being played out that were not just to protect the people who committed the crime, protect those political entities, right, that had gotten their hands dirty because that's a member of the club, right?
The lack of charges by anyone handling the case created more questions than answers for many in Brunswick.
We all had to go through this wondering if he was trying to steal something, because that's what they're telling us. We didn't know him to be a thief or anything like that. It was out of character for him. And so that's what we had to try to deal with in our minds and hearts that were at war with each other.
Then, in May of 2020, A new video of the shooting changes everything.
When you look at the video, what popped up was the black guys running. 2 white men shoot him in the middle of the street. It was hard to watch. It was just as horrific as George Floyd was.
More than 2 months have passed since Ahmaud Arbery was killed, and his loved ones are still trying to get Brunswick police to investigate. Then on May 5th, a cell phone video of the shooting appears on the internet. The video was taken by the McMichaels' neighbor, William Roddy Bryan.
Greg McMichael came to the hardware store where Mr. Bryan was working, fixing small engines, and asked for the phone because the video was still on his cell phone. Greg McMichael took that cell phone, went to his attorney's location, had the video taken off the cell phone, and the attorney and Greg McMichael then released that cell phone video to the public.
These men thought it would exonerate them and show that they were innocent in all of this, when really it showed that they killed Ahmaud Arbery.
What you see on that video is Mr. Bryan videotaping it, Mr. Arbery running. The McMichaels chase Mr. Arbery down to the end of the street and falsely imprison him at that point, cutting him off. He turns around to run back. And it's at that point that Mr. Bryan pulls out of his driveway and actually attempts to hit Mr. Arbery and runs him off the road into the ditch across the street. Mr. Arbery keeps running.
If 2 men were chasing me with guns, yelling obscenities to me, I probably wouldn't stop either.
Mr. Bryan then attempts to hit him not once, not twice, but 3 more times with his pickup truck, thus committing aggravated assault. Mr. Arbery is now trapped between the 2 pickup trucks on Holmes Drive. He has no cell phone. He can't even call for help. As Mr. Bryan pursues him and forces him closer to the white pickup truck, Travis McMichael gets out, and Travis McMichael pulls out his 12-gauge shotgun. There was absolutely no reason to point the shotgun at Mr. Arbery, but he does.
You definitely see Travis McMichael fire 3 shots that tell a different story than what was initially portrayed. It does not show that Ahmaud Arbery was the aggressor, and it definitely doesn't show that the men acted in self-defense.
Within hours, the video goes viral.
When it was released, people had already called this a modern-day lynching, and they already felt like, this was racist behavior on the part of the defendants.
I was torn to pieces. It was just like, he really was just hunted down, like an animal.
I saw Emmett Till, and I saw it in modern day time. And like I said, I would never imagine actually bearing witness to anything like that in my lifetime. Was I angry about it? Oh, most definitely.
That day, hundreds of people take to the streets demanding justice.
The black community and the white community here really rose up in disgust by these guys.
It changed the narrative that Ahmaud was this brazen criminal who needed to be stopped.
Young people hit the street. The people who knew him, who went to school with him, who taught him in school, the people who was close to him, when they went out there in that community, all hell broke loose and everything changed.
It infuriates you, but it also empowers you. That you have to fight as hard as he did.
Due in part to the COVID-19 pandemic, the case also draws global attention.
Shutdowns were still happening. We were forced to pay attention to what was going on, even if it wasn't in our own neighborhood. And that, I believe, is what in particular drew larger support.
Like a wildfire, when that video dropped and hit social media, everyone saw it. Not just Glenn County anymore. It made its way across the world to Africa. Everyone saw that video. So for what it did do, it got everybody watching. And it started holding people accountable.
Ahmaud's murder becomes linked to dozens of other high-profile cases, including Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, and Trayvon Martin.
Well, you got to understand that we as a people, we took a lot of losses over the years, and they were unnecessary losses. In this particular situation, the law enforcement entity failed us severely because you know that a blind eye was kind of turned to it. And that was the unfortunate part about it.
Facing massive pressure from both the public and the media, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp refers the case to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
The GBI hits the ground May 6th, May 7th. They are canvassing the neighborhoods, all neighborhoods, Royal Oaks, Satilla Shores, the Fancy Bluff neighborhood. They're talking to any and everyone, all the people in the neighborhood who had video. They're going over all of the evidence.
For Ahmaud's loved ones, it's a vindication of their efforts to see justice done. But they also know there is still a long way to go. Viral videos have become a major contributor to the resolution of controversial cases. Ahmaud's is no exception.
If the video wasn't there, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would have never heard of Ahmaud Arbery. We would have never known what happened. The world would have never known. And Georgia would have moved on as if nothing ever happened. And to me, that's scary.
3 days after the video of Ahmaud's death is made public, residents of Brunswick gather for a show of solidarity on what would have been his 26th birthday. They remember him for who he was and the difference he wanted to make in this world.
He was working toward his own goals to bettering himself, to either improve himself within his community or perhaps even move outside of Brunswick and make a name for himself there. Unfortunately, we'll never know.
He did nothing to deserve what he got. We have to realize in this world, I mean, being a black man, especially right now, this case, it brought it full circle for us. You can be accused of stuff you didn't do just because of how you look.
Amidst public outcry, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation reviews the video evidence and statements made to police.
Just based on a review of the evidence in about 48 hours, Special Agent Dial is able to determine that warrants for the arrest of Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael are appropriate, and they are arrested.
The governor assigns prosecution of the case to the Cobb County District Attorney's Office in Marietta.
We were able to hit the ground running in concert with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to really work with them in tandem on the investigation and going forward with the prosecution.
Cobb County prosecutors charged the McMichaels with suspicion of felony murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. The move finally restores a bit of faith among Ahmaud supporters.
At the end of the day, we wanted answers and we wanted justice. We wanted change.
Pulled out of my driveway, was going to try to block you.
William Roddy Bryan, the man who made the video of Ahmaud's killing, had initially avoided charges like the McMichaels. But Cobb County prosecutors were determined to make sure he was brought to justice as well.
Mr. Bryan said, I tried to run him off the road this time, then I tried to hit him this time.
I mean, he actually pulled your handle? I wouldn't be surprised if that's his warrants right there. Okay. He was trying to get the handle. Okay.
We actually had Mr. Arbery's palm print on the side of this car. He'd gotten that close to Mr. Arbery that Mr. Arbery had to probably, in our opinion, push away from the car to keep from being hit. The evidence of the case showed that he was acting as a party to the crime.
On May 21st, the DA's office decides to charge Bryan as well.
These men were not law enforcement, which made this case entirely different. And I think is what made it even more troublesome is that traditionally we had seen officers being the aggressors in these cases. And here there was such great lengths to protect those who were only law enforcement adjacent, which only reinforced this idea of a good old boy system.
4 days later, on May 25th, the video of George Floyd's murder adds more fuel to the fire.
Just get up.
His case and Ahmaud's become part of a national groundswell for social justice, with protests in every major city.
When I'm on social media and I see people marching in Minneapolis carrying signs that say justice for Ahmaud, we're in something a lot bigger than ourselves. That video expanded the community exponentially to a global call. And that window between the release of the video, the death of George Floyd, and the death of Breonna Taylor was transformative for a movement that had been moving since 2015.
The Cobb County DA's office impanels a grand jury and gets indictments against all three men.
The indictment charged all three of the defendants with malice murder, which basically means you just don't care about the consequences of what you're doing to this other person.
This was more than just a murder case or a hate crime. This was important to our community. This was important to our state. This was important to our nation, that we not just get to the root of all of these issues, but start to resolve some of the darkness that we found when we pulled the covers back.
Even with the indictments, the case is far from over. It will be up to a nearly all-white jury to determine if a crime was committed at all.
The defendants are white, and so most of the jury looks just like the defendants. Will this play in their favor? Will this render a not guilty verdict?
I'm expecting the worst.
In 2021, a trial date is set for Greg McMichael, Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan. Jury selection begins in November and takes nearly 3 weeks.
It was a tough process. There were a lot of jurors who really felt uncomfortable. A lot of them, some knew the Arbery family, so if you didn't know the Arbery family, then you probably knew the McMichaels.
Courthouse security becomes another major concern.
We had the first black female district attorney in Cobb County at the time we got appointed the case. So she had her own set of security issues we had to worry about before we even got the case. And it only escalated things once we got it. And we ended up getting the first black male district attorney in the county to win an election. So the security threat went even higher.
The threats would come via email, some on social media. We're preparing for a possible war. But at one point, we got some intel that a group of extremists were going to make their way down to South Georgia. And we were just getting ready for it. We were going to fight. We were going to fight. It was a big deal.
Inside the courtroom, however, the focus is on the evidence.
Linda Dunikoski and her team of prosecutors really laid that out, defining that in this particular instance, the McMichaels and William Bryan were the aggressor, that they initiated this, not Ahmaud Arbery, even if he had stolen something from the property, which, again, he did not.
The video did allow the jury to see exactly what took place in the moments before Mr. Arbery was murdered. We have Travis McMichael pointing a shotgun at the chest of Mr. Arbery, an unarmed jogger who has nothing in his hands. He's wearing a t-shirt and some cargo shorts. Never pulls a weapon out, never does anything. So for us, we knew just looking at this, you're the one with the shotgun and then you shot somebody. You're not in imminent fear of receiving serious bodily injury or death. You don't get to claim self-defense.
What happened to Ahmaud was because he was black. Nothing more, nothing less.
The defense insists the case isn't about race, but about law-abiding citizens trying to prevent crime in their neighborhood.
One of the ways the defense tried to cast doubt on Ahmaud Arbery was just showing the repeated instances in which Ahmaud Arbery had been at the property that we've seen on video.
Obviously, the citizen's arrest narrative came into play once their attorneys got a hold of the case.
Travis McMichael takes the stand to tell the jury what happened from his perspective.
He testified that Ahmaud Arbery had grabbed his gun, and that's what led him to shoot. He did not necessarily say or try and vigorously paint Ahmaud Arbery as like this brazen criminal, but he more so took the behavior of, I acted in fear because a crime had been committed against me and I had been a victim of crime before.
Were they in fact effectuating a citizen's arrest. The state's position was they were not. None of them ever mentioned that they were trying to effectuate a citizen's arrest. None of them said they were trying to arrest him. None of them actually used any of those words.
You did nothing wrong. You chose to do it because of what you feared. You feared him. And you feared him because he was black. Everybody saw it for what it was.
On November 24th, the jury returns its verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty.
They found Greg and Travis McMichael guilty of all the charges in the indictment. However, they found Mr. Bryan not guilty of the malice murder. They found him guilty of the remaining charges, though, which would be the aggravated assault and felony murder based on his use of his pickup truck to both assault Mr. Arbery and to falsely imprison him. It is an automatic life sentence. And at this point in time, that is what Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael have been sentenced to. Mr. Bryan was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for his felony murder charge.
On February 22nd, 2022, a separate federal trial also finds the three men guilty of hate crimes.
You hear overwhelming evidence of racial animus on the part of each defendant. And that's when you really see more of how race played a factor.
Ahmaud's killers are behind bars, but for his loved ones and the city of Brunswick, justice is only the beginning.
What are we going to learn from Ahmaud? We've learned currently that racism still exists, prejudice still exists, but how do we move forward? What are we going to do? You can talk all day, but until you put it into action, it means absolutely nothing. It's just a thought.
Ahmaud Arbery's death is definitely a dark cloud, but from that you've seen a great deal of change. And hopefully, and for some residents, they're hopeful that that means improved changes in Brunswick.
Just seeing the impact and hearing the stories that he helped create, it warms my spirit. You know, even though he's not here, Ahmaud always knew it was going to be big. He just didn't know it was going to come at the expense of his life.
sao đây không có? Vâng. Cứ để